Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and this is America's Mayor Live from New Hampshire. Live free or die. Kind of wakes you up to your responsibilities, huh? So, tonight's subject is going to be a little different. It's going to be a tale of two wars. Two wars that remarkably didn't have to happen. It'd be very interesting to study in human history the number of wars that didn't have to happen. I suspect a great many of them. The one usually cited as an example and used quite a bit historically is the First World War. Now, the Second World War, they believe, had to happen, they think, largely because of the First World War, which created Hitler, which created the almost near impossibility that you wouldn't have a war. Not sure that's right either, but let's just accept it for the purposes of what we're about to do. So when Donald Trump left office and the Democrats were spending all their time on concocting some kind of exaggeration of a protest into a riot, into an insurrection, despite the fact that I would say one of the prototypes that we had after a summer, that summer of Democrat riots, I don't know in how many cities, 20, 30. One of the unique characteristics that would tell you it was a riot and not a protest is when they were burning buildings down. This was a protest without anything burning. Anyone getting killed, except for the lies that took place, quickly answered. And the murder that took place was a murder of, well, actually the death of 4 of the protesters, 2 of whom under conditions of, one case possibly first-degree murder and the other possibly negligent homicide. So Donald Trump left office, and here it was, that was the Democrat attempt, and then an out-of-office impeachment to try to stop him from ever coming back into office ever again. And they made many attempts at that, many attempts at doing that. They spent much more time on that than world affairs, which they seem to be operating for the benefit of other nations, clearly for the benefit of China. Of course, Biden had been paid for that. And it seemed for the benefit of a whole group of other nations, not the United States. The end result is Trump left a world at peace, except the contrivance of this so-called insurrection in America, which turns out to be, produced and directed possibly by the Pelosi family, very wealthy family that made their money on insider trading, and then her daughter went into Hollywood. And she comes from a background of political intrigue in Baltimore, and knows how to do political intrigue really well. Little Nancy D'Alessandro. So all of a sudden, within a very short period of time, a world that was virtually without war now has 2 wars. Of course, it's preceded by possibly the most cowardly dereliction of duty at a time of military action by any world leader, much less an American president, and that is leaving people behind to die on purpose in Afghanistan. The decision to take out the troops before the civilians that the terrorists killed, definitely people who died because we made the mistake or they cheated and Biden became president. The people who died during the evacuation in Afghanistan, including our 13 brave men and women of our military whose families would sit here and agree with me if I were to say the sole reason for their death is Joe Biden's irresponsible decision. Not to mention all the people that died thereafter because they were unprotected by our military, which was taken out too quickly, the leaving behind of anywhere from $20 to $80 billion in military equipment that was then used against our friends and against us. And of course, probably if we're talking about treason, we need go no further than the abandonment of Bagram Air Base, which is not made enough of. Bagram Air Base was and is 400 miles from China. China has, for many years, wanted to displace the United States economically and militarily, and threatens us at various times. And of course, so does Russia. Russia just recently threatened our allies, Finland and Sweden, with nuclear attack. We had a base 400 miles from both. We had a base called Bagram. It was a new base. It was one of our best equipped in Asia or the Middle East. And it was pointed directly at China and Russia, and so close, oh gosh, you could drive there. You could have used drones out of there. A strategic location of number one importance. Biden gave it up for the benefit of China over the objection, we are told, of his entire military staff. Not a single one of them preferring the example more of Benedict Arnold than, let's say, Dwight Eisenhower or Douglas R. MacArthur as an American military person, kept their mouths shut as this treason carried itself out. So we ended up with a war in Ukraine. We know what happened. We know where it is, and we know it can't be settled right now, or isn't being settled right now. Then, somewhat thereafter, we had the attack of October 7 in Israel, which was an attack that was premeditated. The plans make it clear it was an attack by Hamas, one of the most brutal and vicious terrorist groups in the world, a proxy of Iran, the biggest supporter of terrorism in the world. And their plan was a straight-out plan to kill maximum civilians, minimum military, and to go after fairly pacifist civilians. And they carried it out. And they carried it out brutally, and they carried it out viciously. They killed children, they killed women, they killed men, they killed children in front of their parents, they killed parents in front of their children, they raped people. And they took hostages, including Americans, about which the United States did the same thing that we did in Afghanistan to now make it a rule. The rule used to be we don't leave people behind. Now we routinely do leave people behind. That's the motto of the Biden administration: leave Americans behind. Some of those Americans were recovered in various trades. Finally, all of them, when we finally got a real president, Donald J. Trump. But that war, the war in Afghanistan that concluded, many people believe, and I think it's way beyond that. I think war was going to happen anyway. Afghanistan made it possible. Putin, after all, attacked under Bush, under Obama. That's when he took most of it, really. And under Biden, he skipped Trump. So there's really no denying the fact that he didn't want to test Trump. And this war only took place because we had a weakling, a coward, and a traitor in the White House. A traitor in giving up Bagram, among other things, and taking all that money from China. Connecting the war in Israel to that is a little harder. You may have some logical arguments to the contrary. that the war might have taken place anyway. I doubt it. I doubt it. I doubt it. In any event, it didn't. And Trump left the White House with the world at peace, America in the middle of another Democrat fraud. And he takes over a country with Democrats now with multiple frauds going on, but the world in serious wars that have anywhere from loose to fairly strong connection to alliances. Now, a lot of the so-called experts don't make enough of this, but I've read several books on this that go back on how the World War started. World War I was the first denominator world war. And one of the things to look for on a world war is if the world is starting to divide into very, very well-defined, they call it axis, or I would say alliances. So you had that in World War I when the Archduke was killed in Serbia. Not a major political assassination. I mean, obviously to them, of course, but worldwide, not a major one. But the world was so divided into, Europe I'm talking about, was so divided into camps that we're having skirmishes and disagreements and economic disagreements and any number, and mostly land, disagreements over land and a valuable property. That when the match lit, it was like on a tripwire going in two directions, right? The match lit in Sarajevo, and the world went up in war, with the U.S. joining somewhat near the end. Very similarly, in the Second World War, the divisions were the Axis powers, which were largely, some others tried to join, they were on the periphery, but it was Germany at the core, Italy and Japan on one side, and Russia that at some point joined Germany, and then Russia played both sides. They were with the Nazis, and then they were with us after Hitler invaded them. But basically it was those three on one side. And England, France, most of the rest of Europe on the other side, with Spain sort of neutral with Franco. Would you call him a Nazi? I don't think so. Would you call him a fascist on a slightly lesser order than Mussolini, and probably more intelligent than Mussolini because he didn't join the war? Yes. So when the war first began in Europe, the alliances lined up the way they were organized in advance with Russia on the German side. That changed due to Hitler's decision to attack them. But the main thing is the United States. So here's how it became a world war coming over to our continent when Japan attacked America. So why wasn't there just a war between the United States and Japan? Because Japan was allied to Germany and Italy, and we considered it an attack that was planned by all of them and declared war on all of them. So we have now, or had until the good work of Bibi Netanyahu in the Middle East, we had a very, very tight alliance that had been established. Iran had, over the last 20 years, nurtured a lot of it with our own money, including cash money given to them by another traitor of a president, Barack Obama. Anyone who gives money to a terrorist who uses absolutely some of that money to kill his own people is a traitor to his own people. We don't have to think about Obama and these other things and his scams to try to take Trump out of office. Obama gave money to the world's leading terrorist at a time when it was well known that that terrorist, among other things, was killing Americans. And he gave it to him in cash in the middle of the night on airplanes that were flown over there. And he didn't tell anybody until he was caught. Of course, he's a prince. He's not allowed to be prosecuted, nor can you say anything bad about him. And he may, in fact, been the most evil president in American history just by that alone. This makes Benedict Arnold look like, well, one thing. But he wasn't giving money to the English. Huh? So now we have to end that war. And Trump was, during the campaign, quite confident that he could do it. He could end it. Even more confident with regard to the war in Ukraine. Both have turned out to be very difficult to end. And here's where it gets interesting. And we can state one premise and then take it in two directions. There's no give. There's no obvious point of solution because of the positions of the four parties, with the United States in the background, and China, and Russia, but mostly the United States. And we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to explain to you how that's the case and what my answer to it is. Now, I'm doing it tonight this way because as you are listening to me, I am on a plane headed to Rome, where I'm going to be meeting about the Iran situation and giving some speeches about it and some talks about it. And as we go along during the week, we'll get you coverage of that as well.